What's up, everybody? So today I sought out to make a video talking about the 32-man tournament with my friends Daedalus and Jgiusti. Now, in my head, I thought we were going to talk about 3 minutes on each stage, and I was going to show them my team, and they were going to dump on it, and then we're going to have a better option. There was going to be like a solid option, and we ended up getting deep into the weeds. Now, I didn't want to re-record that with them and then force the conversation to be condensed down to 3 minutes, because I think there was a lot of valuable information that was shared there. So I'm actually going to be uploading like the full 40-minute conversation we had live on Twitch. And that Twitch chat is also going off at the same time. What I will do, though, is I'm going to put timestamps for the stages. So when we switch from talking about stages 1 to stage 2, that's going to be a timestamp. So if you're thinking about a certain room and you just want to hear our thoughts on that, please use those timestamps, because this will be a long video, but if you want to check out the whole thing, I think that's going to be beneficial. And yeah, the tournament starts tonight. So we got a lot of cool, crazy options. Make sure you come check out everybody on Twitch, because we're going to be doing a bunch of attacks. We'll see what other people who are not in the YouTube space are putting up, and maybe we'll find some kind of crazy, awesome defense that we can throw up on for ourselves. But what I want to say is check out Jgiusti. So I'm going to have his socials in the comment sections below, as well as in the description. Check him out, show him some love. He's a great theory crafter, and Daedalus, he exists. All right, so as I said, join with me are Daedalus and Jgiusti, and we're going to be talking about the 32-man tournament and how we're feeling on certain defenses, and they're going to basically kind of roast what I have up here too. Tell me why it's dumb, tell me why it may not be the best thing, and we'll try and workshop the best of the best. All right, so here we go. Stage 1, When It Rains. I think this one is actually one of the most obvious rooms on what we want to do. So on and we should also mention, this is not the same way it was worded in the blog. This is a nerf down comparison to what it was, and we can touch on that. So when it rains in game, what it's going to do is when a positive effect is applied to enemies, increase the duration of all positive effects on that enemy by 1, and when a negative effect is applied to a character, increase. Sorry, I went too fast. Increase the duration of all negative effects on that character by 1 up to a maximum of 3. And then on defense, all characters gain 20% health and 10% damage. So I got Infinity Watch here. Do any of you have a reason why Infinity Watch is a stupid thing to put in here? And do you have any team that would just absolutely walk over it? We'll start with Dead. Go ahead, Dead.
So I think there's something, and they're not consistent with it. First off, the wording doesn't really make any sense. Because whether or not it's to offense and defense, so the enemy still applies to everybody all the time. So it's kind of confusing as what's going on there. But more importantly, whether or not this applies to safeguard is still a question mark in my head. And for the flip side, trauma, because sometimes things do and sometimes things don't. So if it applies to safeguard, I think hands down, Infinity Watch is easily the no-brainer. If it doesn't, then there'll be potentially, but probably not, some other interesting things that might come up.
So I can actually speak to that. So Safeguard is actually dropped on your turn. So like Nebula opens up with Safeguard. She goes first, Safeguard drops off of her, and then she does an ability, she does dodges to her team, and then everything else she has will get extended. Her defense up will get extended, her immunity will get extended, but Safeguard will have already cleared. Now, how you can get around it is you have 2 stacks of Safeguard, which I think only happens to Infinity Watch members when they drop below a certain life percentage, and then Phi Lavelle adds one to them, or maybe it's Adam Warlock. But I don't think many characters, if any, have more than 1 stack of Safeguard. But it does fall off at the beginning of a character's turn, not at the end. It's kind of a weird...
So then that would be Nebula's the only one that loses it, because she's going to start with her ult and put dodge on everybody, and then they will get theirs extended.
That is my understanding, yes.
Yeah. So if that's the case, which is what it says, right?
Yeah.
Then I think it's very, very good. I think Infinity Watch is pretty much a no-brainer there.
And they also have some... go ahead, Jgiusti. Go ahead.
Oh, that also comes into the best counter, which is Wakanda. But you have to punch across. Do not try to punch up on that. You will get utterly ripped to shreds. Mm-hmm. You have to be strong enough to kill the Phyla out the gate. If you can't do that, you can't do that. You can't do that attack. Just a heads up if anyone is watching this, like look at the phyla, look at the size of your Killmonger, look at the size of your Black Panther. You want them at least the same size as that phyla. If you can't kill her, you're gonna lose.
So you're talking about OG Wakanda, and how do you feel about M'Baku? Are we going to be subbing out M'Baku for one of the War Dog members to do a little bit more damage to that phyla?
I'm gonna do 1 million, mainly because he's built for war, and M'Baku I kind of just let rot.
Yeah,
I haven't built him yet.
Fair enough. I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
I think the amount of stuff that we keep going back to her, but Nakia just trucks so much damage in and outside of war that I think he'll probably just be on War Dogs.
See, I take a little bit of issue with that just because Nakia opens up with that special, and that special doesn't do too much damage. Whereas Killmonger's opening attack, his ultimate, especially if it pings to the same person more than one time, it just does so much damage, and the crits on it is very, very nice. I can see where you're going at though, especially if say you built up your Nakia and you haven't built up your Killmonger. I think it could still work, but you definitely want to have those War Dogs big because, like Jgiusti said, if that phyla survives, then you're going to have a really, really hard time ahead of you.
Agreed.
So do you guys think there's any other options then besides Infinity Watch?
Not on defense. I think there's probably other counters. So Apocalypse is always a candidate here.
Oh, yeah.
It may not be the best use for him, but if that's what you got to do to get through it, I think Darkhold will be a horrible efficiency, just like it always is. But I think they'll muscle through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's more than just War Dogs, but they're all more expensive than War Dogs.
Go ahead, Jgiusti.
I was going to say, the reason why I watch is such a heavy pick for number one is also because of when it comes to extending debuffs. So people have talked about like putting Wakanda there. The issue is Death Seed. Right? If you put Death Seed and you think about it a little bit more and you put a hybrid in there, you go before and you just put a second blind, you can extend that blind so that Wakanda's blinded for 2-3 turns in a row. And Wakanda will do nothing if they're blinded. They have no cleanse. That's going to be the problem with a lot of defenses that you put in there, is that you can, say you put ULX in there, you can ability block the rogue, she'll never get a turn, or she'll never get a useful turn. Morgan, she's on defense. If you put Darkhold in there, you could stun the Morgan and keep her stunned for the rest of the fight. Stuff like that.
Right, so the point you're making here is that Infinity Watch is kind of the no-brainer team because they have that immunity on spawn. Now, it's either going to force a potentially messy Wakanda into Infinity Watch team because people aren't super familiar with that matchup, or it forces, say, Apocalypse Eternals, where they can flip it and negate that immunity. Otherwise, Infinity Watch is kind of immune to being controlled effects here, and that's going to really kind of level the playing field with some of their current counters in game. Am I getting that right, Jgiusti? I would agree with that.
Yes.
Yep. Absolutely.
It does help Eternals against them though, because Eternals keep extending their death proofs. They keep stealing stuff and extending it.
Yeah.
But that's just, if you're pulling Eternals into iWatch, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Well, I wonder about that because we're gonna get through all the other rooms now, and we're gonna find that at least I think offense is gonna be heavily favored here. So if you go a super heavy offensive route, you might be able to just out efficiency people. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump over to number 2 because we'll probably talk about number 1 too long if we stay on it. So
I think on that note,
yeah.
I don't even think you're gonna think that you have a hyper efficiency thing or a hyper offensive setup, and your defense is still gonna be fairly stacked because of how much we have to play with and only 6 rooms to care about.
True, like for what I have on defense, I actually do feel like I have a stacked offense left.
Right.
All right, so portable shield device. We've had a lot of experience in this one in the current season, and it's going to be sticking around in the next season. So basically, what we have here is fortified characters are going to spread all their positive effects to adjacent allies when they use their ultimate ability. Now, they took off the striker effect here, where strikers would flip offense down into offense up. So it's just the fortifier characters. And then they also have that global room where they're gaining 20% health and 10% max damage. Do you think this room is worth leaning into at all? Because there's very few characters that can actually benefit from it, right? Currently, I have Fury in here. He gives speed up and offense up. There's a character like Zemo who can give immunity and defense up. It's a very finite list. Kingpin ultimate's turn 1, and you have him as a fortifier anyway. But his ultimate is already giving those buffs out, so it doesn't really do much for you.
He also takes 6 years to take a turn.
That's true, unless you trigger him. So, first of all, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that this room is worth being into? And then how would you rate my current team? And just know, this is Jumpy's team, so if you want to be harsh about it and make fun of Jumpy, I'm all ears.
I think that I have been a fan of Darkhold on defense since Season 0.
Mm-hmm.
It is just screwy enough of a fight to mess with people.
Yep. The resistance they get.
The resistance they get, they're just a very, very strong team.
Yeah.
And so I've always been a fan of it. I think they're good here. I think this, as you have it with like Fury, is the best use of them. So for me, I'm looking to put them on defense anyway. This is the best place for them with somebody either with Fury or Zemo, something like that, that's going to let them do some shenanigans.
Yeah, I've had people lose Death Seed into this, and they're kind of leaning on the idea that they're going to kill the Fury summons. But what they don't take into account is that speed up on Wong makes him go so much faster, and when he gets his taunt up with all the safeguard and all the buffs, he becomes just impenetrable wall. And then Morgan out of nowhere just one-shots one character that person's heavily leaning into because of that offense up as well.
It's also a little bit of a meta call, but Death Seed has been a counter-ish for Darkhold right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because Darkhold gets such a big nerf to their resistance, which they will not get in this 32. So
True.
Probably someone's going to think, oh yeah, I used Darkhold against this last time. I'm going to use it again, and it's not going to work. Or I'm sorry, I used Death Seed against it last time, and try and use it again, and it's not going to work this time.
Yeah, I've lost a Tangled Web matchup in those old rooms where Darkhold was nerfed because I didn't land anything from Spider-Man 2099 or from Weaver. So I definitely see the resistance playing a factor. Jgiusti, what are you feeling about this team? I know you have a lot of Darkhold counters up your sleeve. Would this make you scratch your head at all?
It all depends on what you're forcing me. This is one of those teams where it really depends on what you got in 5 and 6 to soak up. Like, this team is dead to Tangle Web, Astral Avengers, right? This team's not going to last at all.
If they Tangle Web and Crucible should beat it regardless, but I've had it lose. It was a punch up, so maybe that's a little skewed. But
so I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, you have to think, especially with the firepower you're going against. MOE, New Warriors, they're gonna come in here and do a very strong thing. You gotta remember where you're at, right? Because we play in an area where most people are gonna have the New Warriors tomorrow. Not gonna have it. They're not gonna be free to play and not have it unlocked.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna have it maybe even 7 stars, tomorrow. So you got to think about that in 2. That being said, it's a great counter here. I like Rebirth with Zemo in here as well, because Rebirth has that. It speeds up the Winter Soldier. They can come in there and just hit you out of nowhere because of the speed increases. Is what I like in 2.
Yeah, we've all been the victim of a Winter Soldier Falcon Punch, just getting somebody completely gone. Maybe not winning the matchup, but definitely ruining efficiency. I could see that being a very strong factor too. I wonder about New Warriors heading in here. Now, New Warriors against a Darkhold matchup with Fury, they are going to get kills on those minions, which is going to proc Deathpool. Now, her passive isn't going to do much damage because they do have that safeguard defense up. But it also primes Dagger then to use her ultimate turn 1, and then for them to spam abilities. So I'm interested to see how the new Warriors hang in here. I think more people have an established Darkhold than people will have big New Warriors. Like, for where we are, you're absolutely right. There's going to be a lot of 5+ Yellow Star complete New Warrior teams that we're facing. But for the everyday player, I think that their Darkhold is going to be much bigger than their opponent's New Warrior teams. Okay, so you talked about Zemo, you talked about Rebirth. Do we have any other kind of team that we like in here in this portable shield device? That Underworld team was kind of a thing for a while in here. I think that is just absolutely demolished now by New Warriors, so I would not suggest anybody do that. New Warriors at any level will demolish that. So that one's kind of out there. Do you guys have any other ideas?
I think if you're not trying to do so this one's kind of weird, and we're gonna get in this next couple rooms. I think if you're not trying to do some of the shenanigans we just talked about, it's you can treat this room almost like it's blank, and just set the good defense that you want to set.
Yep, I can agree with that. Now, the dark hole one in particular, you kind of pick if you want to put this here or if you put it in room 6. We'll touch on that when we get to room 6. Let's move on to room 3, and I think you guys will agree with me. This is an absolute nothing room. This Web of Destiny room, this is basically just web warriors get the tangled web tag, and that's it. And that is a joke. I think we had this in the previous season, and if you put your tangled web on defense and you put web warriors with them for whatever reason, I'll have my tangled web on offense, okay? And that match will end in 3 turns, if not 4 at max, right? You guys agree with me that this room doesn't exist as far as room rules go?
I think
Absolutely.
at our level, absolutely. I think at lower levels, there's probably some cuteness to be had with like 4 because the web warriors are going to be huge because everyone had to build them so big for Doom, right?
Yeah.
So there's probably some cuteness to be had with like 4 web warriors and Noir.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would love to see that.
But I think for like most people, it's just blank.
And Jgiusti, I heard you say you agree that this room is basically blank as well.
Yeah, I would say if you're watching a video on YouTube, you're probably engaged enough to know how to handle this. And the worst part about that is then you create, if you put Tangle Webbed with Web Warriors, it's so bad that you can beat it with like Death Seed and like Infinity Watch.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden they have their Tangle Web to kill your major teams.
Yep.
Like all of a sudden now Tangle Web's killing your 2, killing your 6, or it's killing your 5. Those are much more valuable rooms that I currently see right now.
I agree. If you're not trying to make some kind of super Tangled Web team in stage 6, them on defense just doesn't make sense. There's no characters you can put around the Tangled Web that makes the mirror matchup fail because we don't have those ridiculous stage 5 rules. All right, before we talk about what we will actually put in this stage, I just want to talk about stage 4 because I think this is going to be very similar. Like, I don't think this stage actually exists for most people. So in the strength in numbers, every consecutive summon character of the same summon character on either side of the field adds 20% more max health to each future summon of that character. Basically, when you're summoning the same kind of character, this will be most impactful on your multiple man, I suppose, on your Greg, on your, Mr. Negative, that's different summon names. Maybe on Fury if he summons 2 of the same shield securities or if there's 2 mirror Furies on each side. This room just doesn't make any sense because you're never going to be able to summon enough Gregs to have some kind of big tank Greg. And even if you did, you want your Greg to die. And if you bring in multiple man, you are super duper silly. You are a silly Billy Goat. What do you guys think about this room? Am I off base here? And let's start with Jgiusti this time.
So the another one people are going to make up is going to be Kingpin, Doom. The issue with those is, well, this is a Tumors of Nothing. The only thing that it does is it says you might want to keep Death Seeding and Kestrel on offense just in case to get actually clever and think of something. Whatever they thought of is instantly just hard countered by those 2. Either
I agree.
Kestrel or
So, I mean, if you did come up with something super cute and super clever, and we have no idea about it, maybe you want to put your Wakanda in stage 1, debate out the Death Seed, and then they won't have it for this stage. That seems like a super far-fetched idea to me, though. I agree, Death Seed with Kestrel is just going to poop on anything you put in here that summons. What do you think, Dad?
This room is blank. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, with that said, for stages 3 and 4, I guess rooms 3 and 4, what are we feeling? What are some of the generic defense teams that we think can give people problems and make them lose or just cause efficiency issues?
So I think Unlimited is always a candidate, right?
Yeah.
They struggled this season they came out, but that's because they were going up against Darkhold Dorm, and that team is always stupid. But I think they're fine there. You're gonna hate me, but Young Avengers continues to give people trouble, even in just the vanilla form, right? So,
yep.
I think they probably have some work to do. And then at some point, we're going to talk a lot, and we've talked a lot about how everything gets countered, and everything does get countered, but you still have to do stuff that will just take some time. And so a team like Rebirth, right? Like playing against Rebirth, you're never in danger of losing, but it always takes way longer than you want it to.
Yeah, and then just the way that every team, everybody that you face has different power levels on certain characters. And maybe you're going to hit a unfortunate trigger time when you're trying to take out Peggy that is quicker than what you're normally used to, and all of a sudden you're stuck behind a Captain America taunt. And then you probably still win, but to your point, you then start losing efficiency. You get stuck behind just the tank taunts back and forth between Captain America and Hulk, or maybe you don't have Hulk and it's just Captain America being a mega tank, and you just start bleeding out efficiency. So I agree with that on Rebirth, and I also agree with that on Young Avengers. Again, it's these trigger points that happen differently for different enemies, their teams, because not all Kates are the same power levels. So all of a sudden you're pushing Kate to 50% a little bit too quickly on one match that you didn't the week before. Now you're blinded on your Omega Red and you're screwed. And your Squirrel Girl is popping off defense and deflex and death proof, and you're just not ready for that, and it can mess you up. So I do really hate Rebirth and Young Avengers, but I do think that you're right and that they fit the good kind of just standard defense. What do you got, Jgiusti? You got some kind of secret tech?
I would say the biggest thing is that Quicksilver is probably a defensive tune.
Yeah, I agree.
And Quicksilver is going to be your supercharger to put somewhere. So, for example, you could throw Quicksilver with that Rebirth right there instead of Hulk. You could throw Quicksilver in with YA. And that's just it helps take away counters that people normally are used to using into those teams.
Yeah,
because now they have to bring in something bigger to deal with the Quicksilver. Whereas if you put them with just like ULX, the counter for ULX is still going to win against Quicksilver being in there. I wouldn't put him there, but I would think about putting him in like a supercharging a Rebirth, YA, Wakanda, maybe. Let me think about the timing. Horrible idea. Just throwing that as an idea. Maybe not Wakanda as I think about it, but it's that, hey, Quicksilver is a good person to supercharge teams. Yeah, he's a supercharger, and using him to your advantage to stretch out your defense and making that one team go from a B tier or C tier team to an A tier team is going to be very important in winning your round of 32.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you don't want to put too many eggs into one basket, unless maybe in stage 6, because when you do that, people are going to be allotting a certain counter to your unlimited, to what Jgiusti said. And maybe that counter is going to be Apocalypse with Eternals. And sure, you can throw Quicksilver in there, and that's great and everything, except Quicksilver probably still dies to those 2 Eternals taking their ults, because you're going to go in there with a speed advantage anyway, so that you go before the Rogue with your Icarus, and now all of a sudden Cersei is going before the Quicksilver, all that kind of damage coming out there. Maybe there's a Kestrel there popping off into the defense downs as well. So if you put too many eggs into one basket, you might just be wasting your Quicksilver. Or who else would it be? Doom, Dorm. Maybe you're putting Apocalypse on defense. If you put too much into one basket and somebody just throws Masters of Evil at it because they don't need to do some ridiculous Wakanda room in this tournament, you could just be wasting your tools. Do we have any other options? I know that Invaders was floated around in the chat. Invaders catch people off guard in war. Do you think there's a world where a big, super invested Invaders can come in Crucible and change things up a little bit?
Absolutely. Me personally, mine is underleveled, and I'm planning on using Fury somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so if Invaders without Fury, like Invaders is kind of sketchy all the time. Invaders without Fury is bad.
Yeah.
So if you're using Fury anywhere else, then skip the rest of the Invaders and just be aware that that's the price that you pay for using Fury somewhere else.
Okay.
I in general don't advise leaving speed manipulation tunes on defense for when you need them. If you're going to go heavy turtle, you're almost always going to need them. And Fury is one of the best speed manipulators in the game, especially now that his summons actually do something. So,
yeah, I agree. And he's getting a speed bar on spawn now too, so he's actually faster than a character like Zemo. He will get his special or his summons out before Zemo takes a turn, which throws people for a loop a lot. All right. So do we have anything to talk about generic teams that are good on defense but don't really fit into a particular room?
I think we covered a lot of it.
Just a fair warning for people putting ULX on defense now that they don't have immunity. There are other counters that it opens them up to.
Yeah.
Um,
Here, let me move this over here. There we go. All right. So now we're looking at stages 5 and 6. Now, these rooms are actually kind of interesting. I don't like stage 5 at all. I think it nerfs a lot of the really good teams. People seem to be more excited about it than I am, though. So let's read this out. On turn, characters remove all positive effects from self and heal for 10% of max health for each positive effect removed. I don't really like this because if you have offense up, it's going to remove it. If you have counters, it's going to remove it. Safeguard will let you keep your buffs here. So a team with Safeguard coming in here on defense might be okay. I think that's why some people are talking about Infinity Watch here because they're going to just heal out a bunch. I'm sorry, guys. I'm messing with the chat. It's going up and down. But right now I have Young Avengers in there because that's what a lot of people seem to be preparing for. I think this room really messes with Young Avengers because all the defensive buffs that Squirrel Girl's doing on triggers kind of keeps the team in this annoying state where they're hovering around 50%. And as soon as they do a trigger point, Kate is putting a blind and a slow out there. Squirrel Girl's putting more buffs out there. And that seems to really mess with people. But if you're only losing all those buffs, and yes, you're healing it to 100%, well, there's characters that can come in here and easily one-shot a Young Avenger member. How are you guys feeling about this stage? And do you guys... how do you feel about what I just said about them losing abilities, buffs, like offense up, counters, and that kind of thing? Let's go ahead and start with Jgiusti. Yeah.
So I always see this room, and when I first saw it, I was like, this is a bigger detriment to offense than it is to the defense. And what I mean by that is, if you're going into, you're thinking about countering, who's countering, like who uses a lot of offense up, like New Warriors,
Yep.
Who else?
Secret Avengers, Eternals, Tangled Web, but she does get Safeguard when she gets her offense up from using her special, so she's kind of safe.
And so you have to think about that more than on defense, because now they basically, let's say you throw Gamma in, right? Gamma is probably the obvious counter here, or team to put in here. You have it at 6, and I understand that. But if you're going to leave Gamma, straight Gamma, or Gamma Dorm, I'm going to suggest you leave it in 5, because it forces them to think about what they're going to use, because a lot of the standard counters rely on having offense up on Deathpool or offense up on Icarus. And without that offense up, they're going to be hitting a lot less. And so that hurts the offense more than it helps the defense, right? So if you have a defense and that relies on a lot of, let's say Rebirth. Rebirth is a terrible team to put in here, right? They're going to lose all their buffs.
Yeah.
Which is what keeps them alive. Not a good idea.
Yeah.
So Gamma, YA. The YA, the only reason I don't like it is because it doesn't really slow down Death Seed. And if you haven't noticed, we said Death Seed for a lot of these rooms. So Death Seed's 100% an offense team, and it's becoming one of the premier offense teams now. Because of how strong the blind is, the way they pull it in, the way they pepper people with the debuffs and control. So just Death Seed's an offense team. Put them on defense.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point, putting Gamma here in stage 5, Gamma's not a team that relies on buffs. They just don't. They get extra healing, and they just keep being super annoying with healing. Now, we did have a very important comment come up in the chat. Twash is saying that Deathpool, her turn 2, is going to immediately kill Red Hulk. That's true if you have the full New Warrior team. So keep an eye out for that. Just never use that Deathpool ultimate turn 1. You'd kill the She-Hulk here, and you'd go from there. However, Jgiusti is also being Dorm on there. So you would tunnel down the She-Hulk, but she'd come right back. And sure, you would get a permanent kill on Red Hulk, but then you're still staring at Dorm and 3 other Gammas who presumably all have healer on them, and you're going to lose a lot of efficiency, and you could absolutely lose if Dorm reaches that ultimate. Okay.
I think...
Yeah, go ahead, Dad.
I think to put one more feather in the hat of Gamma here, because I'm a huge fan of the Gamma plan here.
Mm-hmm.
They heal, and the real problems with Gamma come about when they start to bounce around 50%, kind of like Young Avengers. So Red Hulk or so Green Hulk, right? He's gonna get a bunch of counters, and then he's gonna get hit, and then he's gonna drop down, and he's gonna take a turn, and he's gonna drop those counters, and he's gonna
Yeah.
go right back above 50%, right? So the native like health bouncing that makes healers so good on Gamma is just worse here for like it's a bigger problem when you're trying to attack into it. So I think 4-piece Gamma plus Dorm here is that's my plan, because I think though that health bounce will at least pull a whole bunch of efficiency stuff, or they'll have to like super over answer it, like Chat said, where they're going to have to bring in the premier teams against it, and then they won't have that against some of the other stuff that you want to set.
So let's talk about then. So what would beat Gamma Dorm? Now, Masters of Evil would be a contender, but they rely heavily on buffs. Kang relies heavily on that offense up to make his ultimate be a permanent kill and actually land the kills. And if you do have Brawn and A-Bomb on your Gamma team, your Red Hulk has a lot of life. He's going to be very tanky. I would not suggest taking out those two characters. So you kind of pick between She-Hulk and Hulk, in my opinion. How do you think Masters of Evil fares? How do you think New Warriors fares? And then how do you think Tangled Web fares? Because those are going to be like our three master key options here. Let's start with Jgiusti. How would you counter your own team if you're comfortable giving that away?
Okay, yeah, I can be. All three of those beat them, and your toolkit for two of those teams to make it work is Doom. You could put Doom next to the tanks. So for New Warriors, you're gonna drop Firestar. You're gonna put in Doom next to Gwenpool. Hulk's gonna push the Doom. You're gonna kill her. MOE, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna push the Doom. You kill him. Hang with 3 turns. Just make sure the ult lines up. That you make sure you kill the Red Hulk, right?
Yeah.
So that's turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. So that's how you're gonna do with those two. And then Tangle Web is just you get to use Doom. So Doom is your primary. That's why I'm worried that you have it in 6. But then again, you're gonna think of that yourself. Doom is probably the easiest way to counter them because you get so many turns in a row. As a solution.
All right, so then you're not worried about the Red Hulk actually getting to use his ultimate, but you do got to get the kill on him. So like you said, if you're going to use Kang, make sure you're lining it up so you're actually getting the kill. If you are going to be using on New Warriors, you might want to make sure that you taking a Firestar, but you want to make sure your death pool is going to be your highest damage character, which is not super hard to do on that team because she is getting 30% from Cloak and Dagger, and she's going to have a lot more stars than Gwenpool to make sure that you can do that ultimate permanent kill on the Red Hulk. So I do like that. I think that's some good strategy having Doom there besides these tanks that are taunting. Gwenpool will be taunting super quick against this enemy team. All right. Any other options for the health insurance? So you guys are very heavy on the Gamma team. What about teams that have Safeguard? So they're going to be getting the benefits of this heal without the detriment of losing their buffs. So that would, to me, would be like Darkhold. Or Infinity Watch, well, they lose it on their first turn, right? Darkhold actually keeps it. And then Dorm, you guys do have in here because when he drops below 50% life, he gets his buffs and he gets Safeguard. So how do you feel about those characters in here? And do you foresee any kind of team you can make around them without Gamma involved? Start with Dead here. Yeah, good.
Yeah, so I think those are like okay. The biggest problem that I have with them is they're gonna struggle in kind of the longevity department, I think.
Okay.
Because once they lose their like initial buff stuff, like Infinity Watch works because it keeps buffs up for forever, right?
Yeah.
And Darkhold works because like it's impossible to get off Kang. But once they take 2 turns, then all of a sudden you got unprotected Morgan, you got unprotected Strange.
Unbuffed Strange, so his ult kind of sucks.
Right. And so like I don't the reason I don't like them is because I think this tournament's going to be about like long battles.
Okay.
And they get weaker the longer the fight goes on. And so you're going to have like two turn cycles and then you just die.
Okay, fair enough. So it could be an efficiency thing, but not one that you're going to be kind of getting a potential win off because they're going to be nerfing themselves in the long run.
Yep.
Jgiusti, how are you feeling about other options besides Gamma here?
I don't think if there's any other ones that I would pick, because then it's almost like there's not a lot of teams that it's not just a blank room for, because it's, if anything, is a detriment. like Rebirth, it hurts them. ULX, it neuters them
Yeah,
to
you
the point where they're not
bad
usable.
here.
And then you're left with iWatch, and the problem with iWatch and Darkhold is there's better rooms to use them.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that.
Right, and that's the other. iWatch is so much better in 1 than it is in 5. Darkhold's so much better in 6 than it is in 5. This is a good segue. Yeah.
All right, yeah, that is a good segue.
I think that's the biggest thing is when you're designing a team for this room, right? Like, just ignore everything we said and remember that you need to turn the downside of this room into an upside, and that's hard.
And that's where Gamma is good because they do not rely on buffs. They just rely on being super tanky, healing up like crazy, and then Red Hulk having his battlefield effect, essentially.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to the last room. So we've been running a little bit late here, and you guys do not have Gamma here. I have Gamma here. I can talk about why a little bit, though what you guys said for Stage 5 does have me questioning my own sanity a little bit. So for Overcharge, special abilities are going to cost 3 more. With that being said, if an ability starts prepared, like Red Hulk's ultimate starts at 3 out of 3 energy, his special will start with 6 out of 6. But then his second special takes that much longer to get to. So that's how that interaction works. And then ultimate abilities cost 3 less. Now, that's actually works in the opposite way. So it's not like if you're 1 away from having the ultimate up, you're still 1 away. No, it'll make you be ultimating turn 1 right away. So bad for your special, good for your ultimate, then the regular on defense. Check. I have Doom, Dorm, and the Gamma team in here, and the reason for that is simply 2 threats using their ultimates on each side, being Doom and Dorm. If either of them gets their ultimate off, that's crazy bad for you. And then I have Red Hulk and the Gamma Bros in there because they're giving him more life, and he's just another threat that they're going to have to deal with along the way. And then if his passive does trigger, he's actually going to get to use his special again right away because it gives like 8 or 9 energy or something like that. So you guys, and Jgiusti, I'll start with you because you kind of hinted there that you're leaning towards Darkhold here and not Darkhold like I have in room 2. Why don't you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I have actually Darkhold APOC in here.
Ooh, fancy.
Because, yeah, that's a very you have APOC ulting instead of specialing turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Heartless ulting turn 1. So you have a lot more tunes that you need to control instead of just like, I'm going to get to them when I get to them. And you also have to think here that your danger is now that Tangle Web's on offense. So Tangled is going to go... Beaver's ult is now 4 turns. And so your issue with 6 right now is that Beaver is going to
Permanently
always
be having charges, yeah.
Yes, permanently charged. You're gonna kind of ignore the Red Hulk, so you're just gonna stun the Doom, come back to the Dorm, kill the Dorm, come back to the Doom, kill the Doom, then come back to them. You'll have plenty of time to do all that with the right team.
Oh, you're talking about for mine, yeah. So Tangled Web would absolutely come in here and poop on my team. Tangled Web against your team though would not work, right? Because Apocalypse is going to be unavoidable, and Doctor Strange Heartless ultimate is also unavoidable. And Doctor Strange Heartless should be going after Apocalypse, depending on how many turns you took, how much speed Morgan fed to the Strange. So if your Strange is using his ultimate after Apocalypse did, he's already hitting into a bunch of nasty debuffs. Could be very, very, very gross. So I'm guessing you're thinking you're going to be using Masters of Evil if you run into that. But wouldn't Unlimited beat Apocalypse Darkhold in this match same way? Because Rogue's going to go first. Rogue is going to have Safeguard up, so she's not going to get her stuff flipped. And then Gambit's actually going to be allowed to ult turn 2.
So your problem with that is what is Rogue's... you special with Rogue, right?
Yeah.
And special turn 1.
Yeah.
Because it starts full, it'll still start full?
Sorry, what?
You said because it'll start full, because it
starts
full.
Rogue special still starts full. Yeah. When you use it on offense, you'll still be able to special.
I mean, that's a good point. That's why this is kind of one of those, like, I'm not sure if the reason I like that is because it forces the RNG of the team that most people are going to bring into that if they run similar to this would be forcing them to use Tangle Web Undying, and they're hoping that APOC does not go after anybody other than Greg, right?
Mm-hmm.
and MOE is gonna. Yeah, it's very hard. That's the issue you have with defense, right? Is you have two premier offense teams that are just gonna, if they are fully built, they will run over anything you put on defense because there's no defense buff that's strong enough to stop you.
Yeah, I actually wonder about that. The team that you mentioned with the Apocalypse and the Strange, both of their ultimates being unavoidable, I actually wonder if Tangled Web would win here. Now, Tangled Web, Eternals would probably come in here and win. That would be what I would do here, and I would probably have Apocalypse on offense to try and get rid of the safeguard on your enemy team. But I still wonder because the Strange ultimate, even if he's covered in debuffs, it'll still increase the damage of that ultimate. It being unavoidable if you can't actually get him killed. I think that is a banger team, the a-hole team in 6. And off the top of my head, I can't think of a counter to it. But let's circle back to that. Dead, what did you have in this room, and what are you feeling for this room?
So this room, it's hard, right?
Mhm.
Because you have to think of all the permutations on how stuff affects, right? I think there's some rules here. I think almost any team you should set in this should have Apocalypse on it.
Interesting. What is that true if you have Big Boy Apocalypse though?
Probably.
Why?
It turns every Apocalypse into Big Boy Apocalypse.
Yeah, but if you have Big Boy Apocalypse, then it's redundant here. Now, if you're putting him with Darkhold, then this is getting strange to ult, so it's benefit there. But if you have Big Boy Apocalypse, maybe you put him somewhere else. No,
I don't think so. I think it turns his ult into a 5-turn ult, right?
Yeah.
So now, not only can you not ignore him at the beginning, you can never ignore him, and he's going to heal up to full every turn, basically, right? So then if you have Big Boy, like your other 4 just get to run amok.
Interesting.
What I currently have set is actually, we talked about it, Eternals with Sam, Chi, and Emma.
Mm-hmm.
Because Icarus ults every other turn.
Yep, and Cersei ults
every turn.
Yep.
And so the idea there is you force them to Eternals you with more speed. And then thinking through it, I think I might swap Shang for Apocalypse because now they have to Eternals you with more speed, which means they have 2 speed characters at least, and that is sketchy.
So they could also Tangled Web you and just walk over you.
Sort of, except Apocalypse does Apocalypse.
Yeah, so if you bring Apocalypse, then yes, then Tangled Web sort of falls off there. Right. Very interesting. So from what I'm getting from the conversation we're having here, it seems like stage 6 is the one that's opening up the most questionable attacks. Like, who are we going to be taking in there now? And I'm just going to delete this because this does not have the same kind of merit as Darkhold Apocalypse would. But let's talk about some teams that you do not want to put in here, because I've some people have been messaging me, and their ideas, they have some big glaring issues, and I think it'd be good to clear the air. So you do not want to put Unlimited in here. And I hate to put you on the spot, Jgiusti, but why don't you let the people know why they should not put Unlimited in here in stage 6? We didn't actually talk about this. I assume you understand, though, what I'm getting at.
You mean the fact that you control them and they never go? Or you...
The fact that Rogue never specials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, so she opens
basically,
it all.
Any team, it's really easy. Any team that you want to open with a special shouldn't go here.
Yeah.
That's also why Gamma was kind of scratching my head, was like, your Red Hulk's not going to special turn 1. That's kind of one of the things that brings RNG.
No, he does special turn 1. If the ability starts ready at the beginning of the match, it'll still start ready. It's just the second time you go to use that ability, it will not work.
And so another thing that's a big thing you got to think about is the firepower that you can bring in with very little effort. And so, as I said, Weaver is always going to have charged.
Yeah.
Eternals are they're going to always have their ults ready.
Yeah.
So if you bring in anything that can't handle that level of firepower, I've heard, like, I'm going to bring in Shang-Chi and say Kestrel, and they're going to have all these ults. It's like, Eternals are just going to ult till they're dead. No. Because they're going to get rewinded, so you could put Eternals with Sam Cap. Now you're in a loop where they And you could put it on auto, and you could be punching up 300k, and eventually they'll die. 500k, 600k.
That's true.
Ults, rewind.
That's
So you have
true.
to think about ways to stop that from happening, because that's an easy answer to just about everything you're going to put in 6. I heard people saying like Rebirth has good cooldowns off that. That's not a good idea because of Eternals.
Any pros to put Eternals in 6? No, what Jgiusti's saying is absolutely right. So what would happen is somebody's going to outspeed you. Like Dead said, he'll throw that in there. It forces somebody to outspeed him. But they will outspeed you. And now, what Jgiusti was just talking about, the Eternals are going to ult. They're going to flip the enemy Eternals speed up into speed down. Your Eternals get speed. They do a 50% turn meter rewind between the two of them. And then they're going to lap your enemy team. And they're either going to kill them outright, or they're going to just, Cersei's going to do another turn meter rewind to them. And now the enemy has slow, you have speed up. You're just going to always take turns until the enemy's dead.
Yeah, I think so. I think my plan is to kind of stress the speed counters, because I mean, Jgiusti said it right. Like you speed is very valuable, particular on offense.
Yeah.
And I'm going to force you to use 2 of it on my room 6. I think it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Right? Like it.
So you're leveraging stage 6 to give breathing room to your other stages, in particularly probably your Gamma Dorm and your Darkhold that are further down.
Yeah, where they can no longer speed them because they had to use their speeds to get past my 6.
Interesting.
So it gets a little bit comprehensive defense plan.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Jgiusti brought up some very good points about Darkhold, right? Like Strange and Apocalypse going off on turn 1, that's really freaking scary, and I don't care what size you are.
Yeah. So, I mean, presumably you're going to have Strange build very high. If you have Apocalypse unlocked, it means you at least have Doctor Strange at gear tier 16, right? And they're the oldest Horseman team, so you've probably put some extra not dark promos, but some extra regular promos into your Strange. They were the Apex everything team for God knows how long. That dark history in Marvel Strike Force. So I definitely see some of the power for Darkhold here. But now I'm also seeing how Eternals could get in there and just absolutely trash any kind of Darkhold team. And that would be with the help of Tangled Web. Tangled Web gets in there, gets the charges up so that Morgan misses her initial ultimate, and then Eternals just start running a train on them as far as turn meter rewinds go. A lot of interesting things to talk about. But this video has run very long compared to what I normally do. What do you guys have to say just as a general tip to the viewers out there? And let's start with Dead, because we started with you in the video. What do you think is the overlying message you would like to give to people heading into this tournament?
I think if you do some very basic math, we have 4 horseman team, mm-hmm. the Eternals, the Tangled Web, and then 3 additional Crucible teams, right? So that's like 8 or 9 teams that are stupidly high power level and only 6 rooms to cover. So don't turtle, but make sure that you got to make sure that you can kill stuff, but be aware you have a lot more offense than you think you have as you're setting this stuff up.
So you were saying find your 6 offensive juggernaut teams and then make sure you're putting the rest in valuable positions on defense.
Exactly.
Right on. Jgiusti, what you got?
Yeah, I think that similar to that is part of this game, especially at the top, is going to be, can you figure out a budget counter for a team like ULX or a team like Rebirth? Is a lot of your fights, I feel like because MOE, New Warriors, and Tangle Web are going to kill your best 3 teams, the win of this game is going to be, how do you beat the next 3 teams? How do you beat the iWatches, the Young Avengers, the Rebirths, unscathed, right? Because I feel like there's more question marks in those fights than there are in the big fights, unless you force something huge in 6, you know?
Yeah.
Would be my warning is, or heads up is, I feel like the big fights are going to be carried by the overpowered offense teams we have right now. It's those bottom 3 that are going to be where people lose a lot of their fights, I think, this week.
That's where I've lost all my fights against Young Avengers and Rebirth that dropped me out of the top 100. I see your point there as well. So don't underestimate the everyman team that we were talking about that we were going to be throwing in those stages 3, 4, and 5. Be very, very careful with them. All right, guys, on that note, we're going to leave you here. I hope you enjoyed this video. The timestamps are definitely there marking each stage, so I hope you didn't waste too much of your time if we started gabbing. And we'll see you guys next time. Jgiusti, Dead, you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye, Internet!
Haters.
And make sure you check out Jgiusti on Twitch. And Jgiusti, did you start a YouTube channel yet?
Yes, I did.
Perfect. You're going to find that in the description below and in the pinned comment. So make sure you check that out. Show Jgiusti some love. He's a very smart theory crafter, and Dead is a friend. And that's it.
I exist.
He's a thing.
That's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Stay happy, healthy, have fun, and I'll see you in the next one.